Hello and welcome to Money Markets and More with me, Dominic Frisby. I'm in the airport picking up my daughter and her plane's late, so I thought I'd do a quick video. And today I haven't got my selfie stick, so I'm just holding up my camera, but hopefully it works okay. The question I'm going to ask today is, will Liz Truss, in becoming PM, mark a turning point for the pound? Now, pound crashes to weakest level since 1985 in blow to Truss was the headlines in the Telegraph website yesterday. And there's an economist called Sean Richards who's quite critical of the Bank of England, and he had this to say in reply to that. The Bank of England had one job today, he said, which was to talk up the pound, and instead their waffling sees it at $1.14. And Theresa May, flash crash aside, that is a 37-year low. And that's measuring it against the dollar. If you measure the pound's purchasing power against essential basics such as energy or houses, its performance has been way more woeful. And it's not just the pound, even if it is one of the worst offenders, it is all fiat money. I've been banging on about it for 20 years, but I may as well bang on about it some more. Fiat money and its devaluation is the greatest and most pernicious intergenerational theft in history. And when you devalue money, you devalue all sorts of other things, but you also devalue salaries, which is to devalue labour. And all the young have is their labour. You boost the value of assets, meanwhile, which is what the old have acquired over their lives. And the net result is to transfer wealth from young to old. Not a lot, but compounded over decades, 5% one year, 8% another, this process has been devastating. And don't get me started on the knock-on effects. Smaller families started later in life, meaning the decline of the local population and all the rest of it. So many people of my generation and above think they are business geniuses because they happen to pay the market rate for the essential item that is a house 30 or 40 years ago. You're not a business genius. You got rich because of systematic and incremental devaluation by successive administrations. That was what did it. And you didn't even get rich because you owned the same house. It was the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve Bank, the European, the Japanese central banks. Central banking has a lot to answer for. Now, it feels like, I had to change hands there, my hand was getting tired, that we might finally be in some kind of end game for fiat money now. Mind you, I thought we were in the end game in 2008, and I'm probably wrong this time around as well. I've no doubt some new magic words, even more unintelligible than quantitative easing, are being conjured up as I write. Anyway, rant over. I had to get that off my chest. Let's move on. We have a new government. Money is the issuance of government. The weak pound is all over the headlines. So I thought it would be an interesting exercise today to look first at the performance of the pound by successive governments over the past generation. There is now a plane taking off. It's probably not the best place to record a video, but anyway. First we look at the performance of pound by successive governments, and then we consider whether one should be a buyer or a seller here. Buy on silence, sell on headlines. That's a good little investment motto that I've just invented. When something makes the headlines, there's often not a lot of narrative left in the tank. The story's mature, and the next stage is exhaustion. It's standard contrarian market psychology. Does the fact that the weak pound has made the headlines mean it is time to take the other side of the trade and go long? Could be. So we're going to start now with a chart of the pound against the dollar, aka cable, since 1970. And by the way, the dollar has a much larger market cap than the pound, so what is going on the other side of the pond tends to have a greater effect on cable than what is happening here. And that's the case at present. The pound is weak, but so is the euro, the yen, and any other number of currencies you care to mention, except the Russian ruble. Current pound weakness is as much a function of US dollar strength as anything. And the chart of the pound against the euro over the last 3 years is much flatter. In any case, cable's the benchmark, so here is the pound against the dollar since 1970, when it was $2.40. The broader trend is down, but there are periods of relative strength: 1976 to 1981, 1985 to 1991, 2000 to 2007. We've basically been in a downtrend since 2007, shortly after Tony Blair stood down and Gordon Brown became PM. It is what is known in the game as a secular bear market. Now, I want to look at the same chart, but this time I have overlaid the government. Now, even though several prime ministers have led successive governments, Wilson, Thatcher, Major and Blair, for example, for the sake of clarity and simplicity, I've marked the chart by prime minister. And needless to say, the dates of the red and blue lines, they're approximate. Now, the first observation I make is that despite their reputation for fiscal competence, the Tories have not been good stewards of the currency. In the case of Edward Heath and David Cameron, the pound was marginally stronger when they stood down than it was when they took office. And despite his presiding over Black Wednesday and the ERM fiasco, for John Major, the pound was only a few percent off, lower than it was when he started. But in the case of, and this surprised me, Margaret Thatcher, also Theresa May and Boris Johnson, less surprising, it was much, much lower. Labour's record is mixed. Harold Wilson saw it lower, Jim Callaghan higher, that surprised me as well. Tony Blair has the best record of all. It went from roughly $1.60 to $2.10, and Gordon Brown was the worst. That said, Blair was one of the few PMs, perhaps the only one, to stand down from a position of strength. Normally PMs are stood down because there is something voters or MPs or both are not happy with, which then gets reflected in a weak currency. So, back to today. This latest move in the dollar has been extraordinary. I've long been suggesting that the US dollar index could go as high as 120. That would be about another 10% from here, though exhaustion indicators are starting to appear. But at a certain point, purchasing power parity is going to kick in, and currencies will reflect relative valuations. And on a purchasing power parity basis, the pound is very cheap at $1.14. The other observation I make about that chart is that new administrations have often marked turning points in the currency. And this, one could argue, was the case for Wilson, Major, Brown, Cameron, May and Johnson. Despite the Tories' record for incompetence, Liz Truss has put together a cabinet that is, broadly speaking, actually conservative. Unlike previous administrations, it's not full of wets and social democrats who happen to be in the Conservative Party. Lower taxes and less spending, I'll believe that when I see it, should lead to economic growth, which should help the currency. The big kahuna, though, is where the Bank of England base rate goes, and indeed the Fed funds rate. I'd say there's not an unreasonable chance that with a new government, we could mark a turning point for the pound. We're at a point of extremity where such a turn could happen. But let's see what government does first before we get too excited. As I say, another not totally unreasonable possibility is that we are in the end game for fiat. In that case, the pound slides below parity. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe to my Substack. If you want to buy gold to hedge yourself against all of this, my recommended bullion dealer is the Pure Gold Company, with whom I have an affiliation deal. I'll put a link in the comments, or maybe there'll even be a link somewhere on the screen here. And not a link in the comments, a link in the description. And finally, if you are in London on September the 28th or the 29th, my lecture with funny bits, How Heavy, about the history of weights and measures, is coming to the Museum of Comedy. It's a 7 to 8 p.m. show, so you can come along and go out for dinner and have a great intellectual foundation for your evening. I'll put a link in the comments, in the description. It's a very interesting subject, effectively how you perceive the world. I hope to see you there. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.